today and an advocate for helping women recognize where life is taking them to evolve instead of simply survive. Today's episode is one that many entrepreneurs, founders, and high performing women and men as well need to know right now. Joining me today is Preethi, and I'm going to have a hard time with this, Balasubramanian, who is a business coach, operations strategist, and #1 Amazon best-selling author, founder of WEA, where she helps founders turn operational chaos into sustainable success through systems, support, and strategical leadership. With over 15 years of international experience across India, the UK, Canada, Preethi has worked in HR operations, executive supporting roles, supporting leaders in both fast growth startups and global organizations. Please allow me to introduce Preethi to the stage now. Hello, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm thrilled. And such an important conversation that you and I need to have today, because so many people in business are struggling because as solo entrepreneurs and even just entrepreneurs who have, there's just not enough, there's too many balls in the air and sometimes not enough strategies and things set up so that they can lead instead of and work on their business instead of in their business. So such an important thing. And I'm excited to also that you're a fellow Torontonian. So here we're both talking to you from Toronto, which is kind of cool because most of my guests are usually thousands of miles away, and somebody in my own backyard. So let's talk about, this is something that is, it's such an important skill, and it's not a skill that most people learn right away. So tell me, how did you get to this point where you can now lead people in producing systems and supporting successful rates for people in business? Where did it all begin?
So I would say, like in my case, I yes have an MBA and did learn some of this in college, but it started way back from my own house. My dad was a solopreneur, an entrepreneur back then, before probably solopreneur wasn't even a word that was used, and I have seen him like go through business, like initially do a lot of things manually and then gradually start to have some kind of a makeshift system that helped him and things like that. So I think it started from there, where I started realizing that any business needs to have those systems, needs to have that support in place. And then I have about 15, 16 years of corporate experience. And like you mentioned, from India, a couple of years in UK, and now in Canada. And in all these roles, I have either been in operations, human resources, or senior executive support. So, and in all these places, I have seen the importance of systems and the support to help those leaders or executives actually shine and do their best jobs.
I love it. And it's such an important role today. But do you find that there's so many entrepreneurs think that they just have to work harder? Why do you believe that mindset eventually breaks people down?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of us, or even the general society itself, does glorify the hustle culture. And I also find that it's probably more so with women. Women are expected to have that superwoman or the Wonder Woman stature where she can pull off everything, and the one who does it externally is appreciated, is glorified, but they don't really see what's happening internally to that person, right?
Mhm.
Because yes, when we initially start off as a founder in your business, we all start off as that one person and us having to do everything. And at that point, that's probably required and it works. But then when your business grows to a certain level, you can't sustain that. You can't keep doing the same amount of you doing the administration, the sales, the client onboarding, the client calls, the networking. It can't all be done by one person. It's humanly not sustainable. The person will break down. There will be burnout.
So you talk about the CEO shift. What does that actually mean?
So, as a founder, like I said, in founder mode, we are always more reactive, doing things, always on. But then when you start looking at yourself as the CEO of the company, you're designing, you're not reacting, you're designing how things work. You are delegating, and you get to a point where it's also that mental shift where you're willing to let go of certain things you have been doing until yesterday, because you realize these are not your areas of genius. You have to identify what is your area of genius, keep that with you, and the rest of it has to get delegated either to a system or to another person.
So when you talk about systems, what exactly are you meaning for that? Because a lot of people who might be watching and might be starting out in their journey have no idea what you're talking about. You just start doing the work. Everybody talks about how important social media is and that, but so they don't really understand when we talk about breaking down into systems what that entails.
Yeah, and to that point, Glenda, a lot of people, when you say systems, they immediately start thinking of huge software systems that they have to incorporate.
Right.
But when I say systems, it starts from SOPs, or like documenting a process that lived in your head into a document. That's where systems start, because as a founder, when we start doing things, you're doing everything, and all of that lives in your head. Like your onboarding is a process that you just follow because you just know what to do. But then when it comes to a point that you have to delegate it to somebody else, it has to be a written down documented system. Otherwise you cannot delegate it to somebody else, because people can't read minds, they can't figure out how to do it. So it starts from documenting processes, then yes, also implementing some software systems like a CRM or a mailer tool or a HRIS platform, depending on what your business is and what the needs are. But I think it's identifying first what needs to be delegated, and clearly having written down processes first.
But wouldn't you want to be starting as when you're talking documenting? So let's say Monday morning, you sit down at your desk and you start making notes of what you do in your day. So
Mm-hmm.
because the average person doesn't even realize what they even do in their day.
Yes.
Um, they're doing it. So, and then as you're documenting, you can also start developing um, like I guess like a step-by-step journal
Mm-hmm.
as to what you're doing. Would you
Yeah.
say that would be clear? Yeah.
Yeah, you should start with, yes, documenting the individual tasks that you do, because to your point, the tasks that are repeatable in the same way are the ones that can be systematized and can be automated. So, and you can take them off your plate. So, for to realize that, like you said, we have to start documenting all the individual tasks that we do, so we know which can then go to a system.
Okay. And then what else? So system is one way of starting and moving your place. So if you wanted to get a virtual assistant or something like that, that they can carry forward onto that.
Mhm.
But what other ways can somebody sort of work things through so that they can take themselves off the front burner?
So in my book also, the and my general framework that I use for coaching, I speak about three elements. So it's the mindset, the systems, and the support, as in the human circle of support. So the first thing, as I said, is the mindset, because many people, like, we fail to even acknowledge to ourselves that yes, we need help, and we are doing things we shouldn't be doing, and that we should be letting go of some things. So that mindset first to acknowledge to yourself and realize. And two, in a also under the mindset thing is we all have this false perception of perfection, right? We think
Yeah.
only I can do it the way I do it, and only if I do it, it'll be perfect. So letting go of those two mindsets is the first thing, and then is the systems. So start with your tasks and your SOPs, and then build systems from there. And once you have the mindset clarity and then you have the systems in place, is when you have to get people in or have to start hiring people, whether it is a virtual assistant or an online business manager or marketing person. Even there, it is clearly understanding what is the role or what are the tasks that you want this person to take on. Because a lot of business owners, I find, when they get to a point where the business is growing and they can't manage everything, they just go blanket hire a VA. And even the term VA is a very huge market, because there are marketing VAs, there are accounting VAs, there are social media VAs, and there are VAs who only do like maybe your inbox and calendar management. So you need to clearly define, create a job description before you go hire somebody. Even if it is your first hire, a contract hire, a part-time hire, doesn't matter what the role is. But unless we have clarity on what the role is expected to do, we would go hire somebody. I've had founders tell me, oh, I have a system and I have a team and I delegate and my delegation doesn't work. It's because you've not found the right person, and you have not trained them, or you haven't set them up for success too. When they come in, you have to clearly train them, onboard them, tell them what is the expectations of this role. You can't just bring somebody in and assume that they would figure everything out.
So we have a question here from Joshua. He wants to know, what type of systems do you recommend? Thank you for asking, Joshua. Go ahead.
So, like I said, initially we can start with your basic tasks and SOPs, and you can do them with like on a Microsoft document or Microsoft Notes, or even a Notion kind of thing. They all have free levels where you can start documenting things. And I would say, probably in most cases, the first official system would be some kind of CRM. And depending on how big or small your organization is, by
Okay,
CRM, it can even be an Excel sheet.
I'm going to stop you for a second because you're using terms that a lot of people aren't going to know.
Hmm.
So we have, that's my job, is to stop you and to help. So SOPs, tell everybody what that is.
So, like I said, SOP is basically just simple documentation of your day to day, like what you do. So it's called the standard operating procedure. So it is just writing down steps as if you're onboarding. Okay, so I first send them a welcome email, and then I do this, and then I send them this contract. So those steps, that's an SOP. So like for every individual task that you do, you should start creating these kind of SOP documents, so that it's, even for you, it's repeatable. It shouldn't depend on your memory, your health, your mental fitness that particular day.
Okay, now you also mentioned CRMs. Can you tell everybody what a CRM is?
So CRM is a customer relationship management, and see, it varies. So you can start from just maintaining a list of your customers, their contact information, and what they do on an Excel sheet, to having it on platforms like HubSpot, or there are different CRM tools. Depending on your business needs, certain CRM tools would also let you send mails from there, send invoices from there to your clients. So as your business grows, depending on where you fit, you might have to pick the right CRM for you.
Perfect. So, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us today as you're watching and learning. And this is really such an important topic. So don't forget to give us a little loving, and please don't hesitate to ask questions, because when we have the experts here, this is your time. Um, and there are some of the biggest signs that a founder, or what are some of the biggest signs that a founder is stuck operating like an employee inside their own business?
I would say if a founder feels like every decision goes through them, or anything that has to literally move in the business, like whether it's sending an email, setting up something, or sending a form or a document, if everything has to need their approval, then they are more still in the employee mode where everything has to run through them. If you are a CEO, you would have a team. There will be a process that says, okay, that certain decisions can be delegated and only certain high level decisions should come to you for approval, or small communications and things. You should have a system or a team that handles it and not come to you for everything. And I would also say, think of it as, can you take a sudden an emergency day off your business and will your business still run? Then you're in CEO mode. If you worry that stepping away from your business for 2 days will break the business, you're in employee mode.
But so many women and men have a hard time delegating because, they have this mindset that if they don't do it, it won't get done right. What do you have to say about that?
I would say that's the one I say, like the false sense of perfection that we all have is, I think if you start by documenting things properly, and when you onboard a person, you instruct them, teach them, train them properly to do it the way you do it. And also, I would say, be okay if the new person coming in does it, like say 75% as well as you do, because in time they may do it better than you.
I think that's a real important point and something that most people can't adapt to. Having a new employee, people don't realize. I remember years ago of starting different careers, and the first while, like you just feel like you're just so inept, you can't do anything right.
Mhm.
And I always believed when I had employees that usually there's a 6-month period, and usually the first 3-4 months that new employee needs a lot of support. But as you come closer to the 6-month period, I started to always see a difference that the employee started to really take ownership and take forth. So it's just a matter of learning that, of having patience. And that's a hard thing to say when you're in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah, and I think it makes it more easier for both you and the person coming in if you kind of set those expectations when they first come on board. And I would say together you should have like those 30, 60, 90-day plans as to what's the expectation, what is it they're doing on their own, where they should come to you. If that is like clearly set out in the beginning, I think that onboarding and that transition would be easier for both of you, and you're kind of setting up yourself and the person coming in for success.
So that's sort of the part that I wanted to go back is learning, um, that you at that point need to have, the amount of communication, especially in the beginning part, is just so important. So let's sort of talk on that subject matter.
Okay.
When a new employee comes in, I think it's important that you start having, you bring them in to go through some of the logical, like the steps of running your business, what your company consists of. Can we talk a little further into that matter?
Hmm. Yeah, so I think when you, especially like bringing that first employee or the first person in, you need to clearly communicate to them in terms of what the business is, what your main goals are, and like the goals for the company in, say, in the next 6 months, a year, and tell them in that puzzle where do they fit in, and
Hmm.
what is their expectation, what should they be doing. And also, I would say when you first bring in a person, like until the previous day, if it is you doing the onboarding, maybe you still continue to do the onboarding for like the next one or two clients, where they just shadow you and observe. They don't do it themselves. So you start with like you do, they observe, and then they do, you pitch in where required, and then let them do it alone. Like, so if you even have systems like processes written down, on day one, you can't give it to the person and be like, okay, do it tomorrow, because they don't have the history that you have. They don't know your style of work. They don't understand your nature of business or your company.
I love it. And it's just so important. Now, you've worked across different countries and cultures. Do you see a common emotional patterns amongst entrepreneurs globally?
I think, yes, I think globally entrepreneurs in some ways are the same, as in we all have a passion for what we do, or uh, we are dedicated to what we do, and we want to do something or serve the society or the community, and that's kind of why they get into entrepreneurship. And for entrepreneurs, especially like the solopreneurs, when you start, I think you treat or your business is your baby, so you want to hold it and you want to do the right thing. And it's from a mother's perspective, it's the same like having a baby, right? Like when you get to a point that you have to send the baby to daycare, you know
Oh,
you have,
no.
yeah, you know you have to, you know that's the right thing to do, but then you also don't want to let go because nobody else can look after your baby as well as you do. I
Oh,
think I think
absolutely.
that emotional connect, I think that's universal to all founders.
So let's talk about that emotional connection that sometimes can be actually your downfall.
Hmm. Yes. So, like I said, so because you think of it that way, you tend to keep it all to yourself, and you're always on that on mode. You're always doing it. And in some cases, I have seen founders who got into their business or started their business because they were really passionate about something and wanted to do it. And over time, so much of the mental load has got to a point where they start detesting the very business or the very passion that got them into it in the first place. And that amount of burnout and that thing is not only bad for your business, it's bad for their health and them as a person also.
What's the difference between building a business from survival mode versus strategic leadership?
So I would say for example, when you're building a building, right? When you're building a house, you're building an apartment complex, we do not really see the scaffolding or what's outside. We only see the end product when the building is done and the building looks nice. But then, if there were no scaffoldings or the scaffoldings were weak, the main building wouldn't stand, or it won't grow. You can't build on it. So I think it's the same thing with business. So with business, if you don't have those foundations properly, the scaffolding or the support of your systems and the people, you can't build sustainably on it. And if with that rickety foundation you build, the building is bound to collapse at some point.
I love that. And so we have to learn that, I think everything's kind of like a somewhat of a balance of
Mm-hmm.
being able within yourself. It's it's something that I think as time goes on, you have to feel that comfort about slowly releasing so that you can move forward in another way.
Mm-hmm.
What is, when we talk about as an entrepreneur and starting out and starting to release, what is probably the first important decision that they should be making about hiring?
So like I said, when before you get to the hiring point, is to clearly determine and document exact tasks, exact deliverables of that person and that role, and create that job description before you go hire a person. Because these days a title means nothing, and a lot of titles are interchangeable. And when you go hire somebody just based on a title and say I want this person, and that person might have had, say you're looking to hire a VA, and you do hire a VA with say 10 years of experience, but they have experience in a different industry, or they are a a strictly administrative VA, but you're looking for a marketing centric VA, then that's not a right fit. So to determine that clearly is the first important thing. So this is even before you post that first job posting ad, or before you send it to a recruitment agency saying I want somebody, is to have that clarity internally for you to decide what is this role supposed to do, what is it that they are taking off from my plate.
Beautiful. How does a person personally protect their peace while leading and supporting others?
So I can probably talk of it from my point of view, or what I do personally is, so I'm a mother of two. I have a business. I'm also an author. So, and I also do actively volunteer with a lot of my kids' activities and things. And so for me, I think I kind of do have blocks of time in my calendar, or certain days are for this and certain days for that. I kind of schedule them that way, but also have the flexibility to move things around, because today might be my business might need me more. There might be a day my kids actually need me more, or my family needs me more for something. So having that flexibility, and even when I plan work or plan like the social media content or anything that I do, I would say I plan it more from my energy levels than just a strict timeline or a strict schedule in place, because life happens. Some days you can stick to your schedule, but
Yeah.
sometimes be willing to have that flexibility. And basically, I would also say, like, have that grace, be willing to forgive yourself, and move with how the day requires you to move.
I, the key point there, and that's the mic drop moment, is being able to forgive yourself that, we live in a world where people try to be perfect. And we got to learn that, it's perfectly fine to be imperfect. And
Mm-hmm.
when we can think in those ways, because nothing is perfect in life, and learn that when something falls, we have to learn to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of my next question was going to be what like a high performing person needs to stop believing in order to grow sustainability. So for me, it would be about letting go of the perfection.
Mm-hmm.
What other areas would you believe that they have to stop believing in order to grow?
I think it's one is the perfection, like you said, but the other thing I would say is also, and sometimes I think it's also what we are grown up with, or what is fine tuned into us. Because like from my point of view, I grew up in India, in a place where I was always told you have to work hard, you have to constantly keep doing, and that's the only way you can excel. And also to some extent, yes, it did make sense back then, because huge population, there is there is a lot of competition at every level for certain resources and certain things. So having to be on the top was always required. But I think as a business, I think we need to understand there could be two or three people doing the same business or offering the same services, but you have your own group, or you have your own client base. And for it is for some people, it may not be for some people. And be willing to accept that, like when some people say no to you, yeah, maybe you aren't the right fit for them. Be willing to accept that. So it's the perfection, being willing to take no and be willing to say no sometimes. I think those are some things we should all cultivate.
Very good. What does sustainable success actually look like to you now compared to earlier in your career?
So I would say, like, even me, when I initially started my business was started more of as a side hustle. Not, I wasn't doing that full time. So when I started, I was doing 9 to 5 in a corporate, coming back home to handling a few things for the children, and then logging back in to do a few things for my clients. So I was kind of doing 9 to 9 days, and that kind of was taking a toll on me. I wasn't 100% available for my children, or if my children came telling me something, I was impatient with them because I was stressed already with all of these. So the way I see it now is I have learned to apportion time or apportion myself accordingly where it's required. And whether it's my personal side or my professional side, I have learned to ask for help, learned to say no,
Ooh, those are two big ones.
still learning, but getting there gradually. But sometimes, like, I'm willing to ask, like, or tell people, no, yes, I will do it for you, but I can't do it tomorrow. I still need time to do it. Or being more open about these things and communicating. And also, I think it's letting go of my own guilt, because one point, if I said no to somebody, I used to feel guilty that, oh, I shouldn't have said no. I should have somehow tried to do it.
Yeah.
But then now I have learned to understand that no, that's not on me. It's not my mistake, or they should be understanding, or they should be willing to wait. So I think that's something I'm gradually learning and evolving myself to.
I think that's a never-ending
Mhm.
situation, especially with women, since we carry so many sides to life. Whether it's you running your family or your business, all the kids things. It's the juggling. It's a never-ending thing, and when a ball falls, we allow it to affect us sometimes too much.
Mhm.
And your point of being able to say no is another huge thing that most, and I know it took me years to learn to say no and to realize that no was a full sentence.
True.
Because I think that's part of the thing in business is you have to learn that you don't owe anybody an explanation.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of being, let's talk a little bit about mindset because, I know that word is thrown out a lot and people, sort of poo poo it as if it's not important. But I think mindset is something that is the number one thing in life, in every area of our life, and how we can change in our business and in our even our families is through mindset. So let's talk for a moment about mindset.
Okay, so the couple of things, like even with my own or with my clients, the mindset piece that I tell you is one, that the self guilt thing, letting go of the self guilt thing and being willing to say no, and the perfection thing, like feeling that only you can do it the best way. And the other thing I would say is, so I slightly deviating, but then I did read a book called Power Moms, and it talks about, like, the work-life balance thing that we all talk about is, like, that actually is not a balance. Like, it's not a 50-50 every time or every day.
It's true.
But so, and that book talks about a concept of work-life sway. So you sway from one to another. So even within the same given day, especially if you're somebody working from home, when you're doing your business thing or when you're working from home, in that moment, in that half an hour, in that 1 hour, whatever that is, you give your 100% to the job that you're doing. But then if you need to step away to deal with something in the family, you step away. And when you step away, you give the family the 100% for that period of 10 minutes or half an hour. And when you come back, you switch. So being willing to do that sway and accepting it for yourself, that that's the right way to do. There is no perfection. There is no right or wrong. What is right for you may be wrong for me, and vice versa. And being understanding and forgiving to yourself about these things is very important.
Yeah. And that's, and I want to talk about, you talk about switching from, from, let's say, working in your business for an hour and then maybe you got to go to the kids.
Mhm.
It's really hard to switch on and off from one thing to another, because sometimes you could be moving forward and be on track for something that you really set your line to, and then you got to switch over, and that break you can lose it. How can we go about ourselves so that it's more of a smoother transition to switch, so we don't lose the momentum that we've gained?
No, so I would say on a general day, you should have yourself a schedule. And so in my case, I like morning until my kids are dropped off in school. I don't start my business stuff. I don't come in. I mean, I might occasionally look at an email and respond, but I don't come sit at my desk and start working. I don't do that until they're off in school. And the time that they are in school, most of the time, other than a lunch break, I'm actually doing my work.
Yeah.
And then like same thing, like in evenings, I know when they have their classes and schedule, and I plan my day accordingly. Most times it goes smoothly, but one-off emergencies can happen. I might get a call from school saying, oh, okay, I think your daughter is not well, come pick her up. Then that day things have to move about a little bit. So I think for me, having that clear schedule is one. And two is I have a clear to-do list or list of activities to do. I have a list of things to do. I have a follow-up list. I'm a list person, so I have lists for like things to do, things to follow up, and then so that kind of keeps me on track. So even when I'm doing something for some reason, if I have to go midway, I can save it there and come back and pick up from there because I have a system in place.
So when do you start to plan your day?
So typically at least a week in advance. So some of them are longer. So if it's a project or something, then I would schedule it into my calendar. I'm like, okay, I'm working on this client's this particular thing every Wednesday from say 10 to 11. Then I would have put them in my calendar. But every Friday afternoon, I review my next week to make sure what's there, what's not there. It does something have to move so that I have that sorted out and I don't come into a mess on a Monday morning.
So you start your Monday morning fresh because you're organized.
Yes.
I usually start to plan or I look through my calendar the night before and give myself more of what is the most important thing. That usually the biggest task begins in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I do look at, like you said, when I end the day today, I look at what's there for the next day and plan the next day. But in a longer term, I look at once every week on a Friday evening. And to your point, I also do that, like if there is anything that requires, say, a lot of writing, editing, or creating content and things, that's more of a morning thing to do. If it's maybe a couple of follow-up emails or things like that, or I have to invoice somebody, that's probably an after lunch thing to do because that doesn't need me to be fully alert and like so like I said, I also like plan my day depending on where my energy levels are that day.
I love it. And it's so true, right? When your energy level, like I find that the bigger jobs need to be done in the morning because you're more alert and you're ready to go at it. And, that's where my time block is more of not being interrupted.
Yeah.
So then later in the day. So we've talked about a lot of things, but I also wanted to make sure that we come through and talk about the fact that you are also an author, and you have two different areas of books. So can we talk about the two areas of your books and what started you on that journey?
So yes, I do have like the business entrepreneur side of books, and I also have children's books. So the entrepreneur side of books, actually, I have two books and now a workbook kind of thing that supplements the second book, and it's all based on my framework, which I call the EASY equation: systems plus support equals sustainable success, and that's for entrepreneurs. So the first book is more talks about the framework, but the second book is more of a guide. It kind of walks you through the process to DIY it in your own business, and there is a accompanying workbook for you to take notes and plan your business also. So that's the business side of books.
I'm sorry. And what is the name of that again?
It's the Ease Equation.
Okay.
It's a Ease Equation series, so there are 3 books under them. You can find them on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, most of those usual places.
Perfect. Yeah.
And my children's books, I have 2 series of children's books. One's called The Mystic India for Kids, for children, say, under the age of 10. And the second series are more chapter books, which are called Everyday Superpowers.
Mhm.
And
I
that
like
side
that.
of my journey started basically because of my daughter. So my son was born in India. He was in India for a few years and has experienced that culture, the religion, and had influence of listening to stories and things from his grandparents. But my daughter was born here and in the middle of the pandemic times as well. So which
Wow.
meant she doesn't have exposure to that. And also in the generic stream of things here, unless I told her those stories or I told her about those mythology or the rituals and why we do it and things like that, she wouldn't learn it otherwise in Canada, growing up in Canada. So I initially started off by orally telling her these stories as more as bedtime stories. And when I did go look for books to read them to her, I realized there were books which had bits and pieces of stories included here and there, but it didn't kind of have the whole story, or it wasn't chronologically right, or in some cases, it wasn't written in a language that a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old would understand. So that's what got me into writing them. Initially, they were just PDF documents,
Yeah.
and so when she was reading them, or like they all have like coloring pages and illustrations because it's for children, right? So when she was doing using them at her class, or like after her class activities, some of the other parents saw them and assumed I had downloaded it from somewhere and asked me where they could get it from. And that kind of is what led me into exploring self publishing and getting them published. And my son, who is a 14-year-old now, is also a published author. So while
Really?
kind of our writing journey started together. So while I was trying to write these stories and create PDFs for my daughter, he was like around 10 when he had started writing a story. But when he was in grade 6 and yeah, 12 years old, so his school board, the Toronto District School Board here, had an initiative where they were encouraging young children who wanted to be authors. So there was a small, tiny project in school or through the school board, which was encouraging children who wanted to write books. And they taught them like how to design a cover on, say, Canva, or how if you draw something manually, how do you get it into becoming your book cover. And so since he already almost had a manuscript, that's when he got his first book published. And once that happened, he is encouraged to write more. So he's got 2 books published and a couple more that he's writing now. And we are also co-authoring 1 book now.
What, you and him?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love this. I love it. I always felt in my world that the greatest gift that I could give my children was to read. And I would always put away. They would always get some small amount of money for spending what the way they wanted to, but each week, when my kids were growing up, we had chapters and Indigo, but mostly chapters was the biggest store, and we would go every week. And they didn't need to spend their own money. That was my way. We would go for a few hours, and we would go venturing into the books to find the books that they would love. And it was a big part. Bedtime was never bedtime without a book. And I think it really led to a very, my kids are now adults and well established, and have done very well through school and everything else. And I think that's one of the most important things in that we can give to our children is the love to read.
Yes, and I think that's kind of what also got my son started because my mom is a retired school teacher, and I think her first gift to him at age 1 was a set of books. And so I've always been like from when he was months old, I've been reading books to him, and it had come to a point where he couldn't read yet, but from listening to me read the book so many times, he would flip the pages and read it basically from memory, not from actual words. And I think that's kind of where it got started and got him into the love of reading and love of books. And that's kind of what's got him to writing his own books now.
And I think it's, as a parent and now a grandparent, we've done doing the same. My daughter doing the exact same thing as, the book started from a very young age. And now, her first birthday, she got a lot of books from everybody because it's time to start a library of your own. And right. So it's an important part of our lives because too many people today don't read.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's such a wonderful thing when you can um, understand what you're reading. And I
Mm-hmm.
say that with all due respect because there's too many people today that read things but really don't understand what they're reading. And I think it all comes from, day one. Like, even when I remember when my daughter was struggling, and she was very young at that point, and I saw her struggling. So what I did, and it was just something that came to me, is I started buying books that
Mm-hmm.
were below her reading level. And I did that so that as she started to read, to feel the accomplishment of finishing a book,
Mm-hmm.
not so that she's pulling so much into it. So when she started, as her confidence level increased, and being so excited that she finished a book and moving forward, that brought up her reading level. And because confidence, and when we talk about whether it's business, where we talk about as children, is really such an important factor in all of our lives.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like you said, like even the library system here does that, right? Like when they have their summer reading programs, it doesn't matter at what level they read, but the number of books, like once they have done 5 books, they get a sticker. It isn't a big reward, but then for little children, that means something that, oh, okay, I've read 5 books. And when you go back to the library, they ask you, oh, okay, so who was the character of the book? Or what did you learn from that book? It's that simple one line answer that they give, and they get a sticker for it. And like you said, that's an accomplishment, and that encourages them to pick up a few more books and read.
And I think part of life is where in everything that we do, and even if we go back to the fact of our people, like our entrepreneurs, business people, the other important thing that they also need to have is that accomplishment that they have done something well. And
Mm-hmm.
I think so it goes, that this is, no matter what age you are, no matter what level you are, we all have to feel that we're getting somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
because we've got those voices in our head that knock us down and tell us that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough. And it starts at a very young age, but it continues on. And I know through clients that I have, it continues on well through life.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the entrepreneur side, what are some of the ways that people in themselves can feel accomplished?
I think it is, like you said, I would say like look at it like the little children do, right? Like find joy in small things. So um, I would say like even simple things like, okay, you had a to-do list of 5 things to do today, and you managed to do all 5 of them. Give yourself a pat on the back that you've done what you set out to do in the morning. And also, it's like you got a one new client. That's an achievement. Or and even when I was still employed and working in the corporate, like having a to-do list, I also had what I called a tada list of things that I did or things that I achieved. And back when in the corporate days, it helped me because when I had to go in for my performance review, I could go with a list of things and say, I did all of these things. But then as an entrepreneur for yourself also, keep a list of things like that you did. It can be big, small, a new client, you getting featured somewhere. It can be anything, big or small. And maybe once a quarter or twice a year when you audit your business finances, audit this too. It gives you a sense of accomplishment of what you've done in the last 3 months, in the last 6 months.
I love that. And I'm also a firm believer of being able to celebrate things. So the celebration is important. And also, we have to learn that our failures are not actual failures. They're learned. So as entrepreneurs and what we can teach even our children, the same type of thing. Tell me about how you feel about when something doesn't go right, and maybe there is something that maybe we really failed in, how we can move forward from that.
I know, like, it might sound very philosophical, but then I think also growing up, what my dad used to always tell me is there is no winning and losing, it's always winning and learning. You win in something, or you learn that this is not the right way to do it, or you learn that I should do it another way. So I think whether it's your business or your life, you start looking at it from that lens that, okay, something didn't go well, but take your time to, I mean, I know if something goes bad, take your time to grieve it, but then also then come back to it and analyze and see, okay, what went wrong, why did it go wrong, and if I were to do it another time, what are the things I can do to get a different outcome, and you learn from it.
So important. Such remarkable wisdom there. And I think that when we learn that we can fail and progress, because it is a learn. It is not something that And I think when things knock us down, it also is a way for us to learn about getting back up again.
Hmm.
Nothing is, that, even if it's money, it could be built back up again. We're never at a loss
Hmm.
per se.
If you think about it, like, that's how humans are built, right? Like when we, as a little child, when you learn to talk or learn to walk, you fail,
Yeah.
you fall a million times before you can get up and learn to walk properly, and that's kind of how we are built. So if we take the same ideology into our adult lives and the things that we do, then yeah, we won't feel bad about falling and getting back up.
So important, and such, the wisest words of all. So, where can people reach out to find you? And because you have so much great information, it's really important that people have to know where they can find you.
So my business side of things, I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can find me by searching my name. And on Instagram, I have my book side and the author side of things are on Instagram under the handle at Wandering Pages.
Wow, Preethi, thank you so much. This has been such a powerful and important conversation we've had on both levels, whether it's your books as you teach your children and release, we remember, because we are teaching our future beings that, once we show our children respect and love and interest in those things, it's still moving our lives forward. So thank you very much for doing that, and for, most importantly, for helping the entrepreneurs, the so many, that important job today of so many people starting out and not knowing about the systems and moving forward with starting to build themselves up instead of knocking themselves down.
Mhm.
it's one of the most important things that we have to learn to do, as to keep on going and building and exploring the all different things. So thank you very much for what you do and for building these programs or leadership systems, supports, and boundaries that we talked about. It's all the most important thing about building yourself throughout everything as well.
Thank
And
you.
if we have anybody here that, if you're wanted to give one piece of important information to an entrepreneur that's listening right now, what would you tell them?
Um, I, if it's one piece of information, I would tell them to be more forgiving of themselves and be willing to grow, learn and grow with your business.
And no matter what, remember, nothing is set in cement. That's the most important thing, to trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You are worth it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Such important information. And most importantly, thank you for joining us all today on Let's Get Real. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this episode with other people, other entrepreneurs that need to know the most important things about letting us controlling how we cannot, how we don't have to have everything controlling us. We can control other matters around us so that we're not working in our business, and we can start working on our business, because we don't need, the most important thing is your health and is your wealth. And that's where it all starts. Remember, everybody, just to love yourself that little bit more. Thank you very much for joining. It's been a wonderful time of getting to know you, and I'm so impressed with what you have done, and becoming, even teaching your children to become authors. How awesome is that?
Thank you. Thank you, Glinda.
It's my pleasure. Thank you all for listening, and remember to share us, because there's other people that need to know about this. Thank you all for today. Bye for now.